Good afternoon. My name is Liz Rowlinson, overseas property journalist. We're here to talk about healthcare in Spain, always a massive subject when we are talking about buying and moving to Spain. We've got a short session, so we're going to try and cover some basics, and I'm here with Raquel Perez. Hi, Raquel. Can you tell people where you are and basically what you do?
Good afternoon. Hello. Thank you for the introduction. It's Raquel Perez from Perez Legal Group. We are based in Costa del Sol, Costa Blanca, and also Almeria. But as our logo indicates, we work in any part of Spain. We are also lawyers, registered lawyers, chartered accountants. But myself, I am also specialized on healthcare. And we have processed many residency permits this year, and the healthcare is a key point in order to be able to obtain the approval for the residency permit. So we got specialized on that as well. And yeah, it has been quite a big road we had since January 2020.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people we see moving to Spain are sort of 50 plus because they're kind of winding down, semi-retiring. And, you know, we begin to think about healthcare more when we edge towards 50. So it's a massive subject. Could you just, we've got, as I said, a lot to get through, but can you just briefly outline how the system works in Spain in terms of, you know, is there state healthcare, who can access it, or how do what do people do?
How does it work? Yes, of course, yeah. Liz. Well, obviously, in order to get a residency permit, because that's the idea. The idea is obviously if you're moving to Spain and you're living in Spain, either you are working or you are a pensioner, or simply you're not working because you retired, you've had an early retirement, and therefore it's important to be covered health-wise. There are a few options through the national healthcare system in Spain, working together with the UK. UK set up a long time ago the national healthcare system, which is a department called National Healthcare Overseas, in which you can apply for the S1 in case and only if you are receiving a pension, so you are a pensioner. So the S1 means that if you become a resident in Spain and you are living in Spain permanently more than 183 days, you have to have access to healthcare. For the residency permit, obviously it's a must, it's one of the requirements. Either you provide an S1, which can be applied if you receive a pension, which can be applied through the national healthcare system overseas in the UK. And then the procedure is you need really to go to get the S1 and go through the Spanish healthcare system offices where you have bought the property, where your property belongs to, either by renting or by buying a property, because obviously you have to have a main domicile and a main residence in Spain in order to become resident and go through the system of the healthcare. And if that is the case, you go to the office, which is the closest one to where you live, and with the S1, it will provide the national health care. This is one of the methods, one of the possibilities.
Okay.
Second, you've got another possibility, which is called convenio especial. The convenio, obviously, this is all very elaborated, Liz, and I'm happy to answer particular questions or personal questions afterwards. There is a convenio especial, which is a special agreement between UK and Spain. Obviously, you have to pay a fee per month, depending on your income and depending of your income on your pension, if that is the case, that you contribute to the national healthcare system in Spain called Convenio Especial, and you pay a monthly payment and you are covered, fully covered with the national healthcare. And this is the same system as the S1. You have to be listed and registered in your national healthcare office close to your address. And then you are registered with your GP, etc. And then the last option, well, this option is only if you have been registered with a town hall where you live for at least 1 year. And then the last option is the private healthcare, if you're not qualified for one of the previous ones. So if you haven't lived for 1 year in Spain, you're not qualified for the Convenio Especial, you cannot really get that regime. You have to go for the option of the private healthcare. And if you're not entitled to have an S1, it's because obviously you are not receiving a pension, and therefore you retired previously to your being a pensioner, and then you have to go with the option of the private healthcare, which is Sanitas, which is the one approved by the police station.
Okay, we've got some questions on what you just said, and I should just point out to people that if you've got some questions, there's a question and answer facility on Zoom, so do ping over briefly some questions. Isabel, Raquel, when you mentioned pension, do you mean state pension or private pension?
I mean a state pension.
Great. Okay, about 3 people asked about that.
It has to be a state pension.
Brilliant. And in Spain, I mean, you don't have general practitioners like we do in the UK. I think, do you have medical centres? How do you, if you have a problem, where do you go? You don't go straight to a hospital, do you?
Well, if you go to a medical centre, obviously you have to distinguish between an emergency and also go for an appointment to a doctor. In the medical centres, when you've got access to the national healthcare, you've got, in every single village, you've got a healthcare centre in which you can join, as I said before, through the S1 or Convenio Especial, or if you are working in Spain, which I haven't mentioned, or either self-employed or employed, you have automatically access to the national healthcare system in Spain. Means that you are contributing to the national healthcare system in Spain by one of them, by being self-employed or being employed by a company, and therefore you've got automatically national health covered in Spain. So you go to this center and you have to be registered with with one of the options I mentioned, and then you will be assigned a doctor, which is the equivalent to the GP.
Okay.
If you got that, if you got your healthcare card, it means that the majority of the prescriptions, when you go to the pharmacy, you got cover 80% depending on the age of the person, and you don't pay the full percentage of the medicine. You just pay a percentage, like 20%, of the medicine you have to buy.
Okay. Great. And to, you mentioned private healthcare. I mean, can you? I know I've talked to you on another matter on typical costs about this before. But I mean, if supposing you're 50, let's take a typical age of one of the people moving to Spain. How much would private healthcare cost for me if I didn't have any pre-existing conditions, roughly?
Well, as you said, obviously it all depends on the persisting conditions. To start with, we have already processed more than 300 applications of residency permits since 2020 started. Obviously, we had many different cases, and the majority of them, because they are really, they got an early retirement, they have to go with the solution of the private healthcare. Me personally, I would say that I've got also Sanitas and I've got national healthcare cover just for the sake of having a quick attention, a speedy attention, because in Spain happens that in the UK it's quite crowded and you can't always to wait for long queues for being attending. So if you got an operation, for example, and it's not really a matter of life or death, you just have to be listed in a queue and you have to wait for your turn. Which means that if you got a private health care, which is not really, and I will explain in a minute how it works, is not really a big burden. You don't really have to pay thousands of euros as many people believe. The good of it is, the positive is that in Spain, the private health care works very different than in the UK. For example, if you got a monthly payment of a policy like Sanitas, that I know that under the Sanitas says Bupa, it works very different. You pay a monthly fee for a person that don't have any really heavy restrictions. That can cost around £70 a month. And the difference between Spain and the UK with the private healthcare is that you don't have to pay any additional fee to any specialist, any operations, or any hospitals. When you pay your £70 per month, per person, yes, then you've got absolutely everything covered. You've got any specialist covered, any test is covered, any hospital, any doctors, any specialists, even you've got some dental attention, like 2 cleansings a year, you got podologists, you got dermatologists, absolutely everything is covered without paying any additional extra payment like works in the UK. Different is that the prescriptions, what happened with the prescription? Because I know, Liz, this is a very common question with the prescriptions. No, the prescription in this case, when you get private healthcare, prescriptions are not included in the monthly policy. But £70 is not a big deal to have absolutely everything covered, hospitals, specialists, operations. You don't have to pay anything extra.
But that, just to clarify, as a question we've got, that assumes you haven't got any pre-existing conditions. There
are clients of ours that they do have some pre-existing condition, like for example diabetes type 2. They had operations in the past, etc., and still they are paying. Maybe they're paying a little bit more depending on the age, because the policy. The quotations we provide of Sanitas to clients depends obviously very much on the age. Last week we did a quotation for a 75-year-old person, and he paid €101, which is around £80 or £79 more or less. Sorry, I don't know exactly, but it's not a big deal for a 75-year-old person. And this person, for example, had persistent condition. He was operated with cancer, prostate cancer, and he has diabetes type 2, and still he was accepted. So it's not really, really heavy. How can we consider a heavy thing? Well, I can say, for example, a transplant. I had a client who had a kidney transplanted, and that's a heavy issue because it needs an ongoing assistance, an ongoing medicine, ongoing sustain from the company, and then Sanitas rejected that person, obviously. But as I said, persisting conditions depends on what.
Okay, thank
you. Not always rejected.
Brilliant. Just to whiz through a couple of questions for you, Raquel. So you mentioned Sanitas, but I mean, how would you know it's good to shop around always. How would you know which private healthcare to go with if you're in the UK and you don't know where to start?
Well, I mean, we can provide always a quotation. There are many different private health covers. I have to say that for residency applications, they're quite specific. The police station is quite specific on which companies they do accept, because they have to have a special policy duly approved for residency applications. So I can tell you, this is like shopping around, and it's not really a big difference between maybe other companies, but you need to take to have a look and be careful about which company to choose, because not all of them are accepted by the police station, and not all of them, for example, they will not accept a type of policy that they have co-payments or special conditions. They have to have full cover, otherwise they will not get the residency permit.
Okay.
Of course they can shop around, of course.
How long is this list then, Raquel? How can people access this list of acceptable companies for the residencia?
Well, I have to say they are quite crowded at the
Oh,
moment with the applications, and there are many British people wanting to move to Spain before Brexit. And what I could say is, if you already made a choice to, or made a plans already to move to Spain, don't really delay it very much, because we are already in September. You really have
sure.
to meet a certain number of requirements of bank certificate, private healthcare, you're not qualified to an S1 or not qualified for national healthcare, you're not working, if you're not employed by a company, you really need to move quickly, because once the procedure is you have to submit documents, which are really 4 certificates: bank certificate, health certificate, padron, and being able to provide a domicile by renting or buying. So we need to submit these documents. Once they are submitted, they have to give you the approval. And then the client in the meantime, they don't need to come. So if they got clients that they got difficulties in coming to Spain, we can do everything online, submit all the documentation, and then once they give the okay, the approval, then they have to give you a couple of weeks to come to Spain and put a fingerprint. That's how it works.
Okay.
And once you made, the question will be, and the question probably in the head of many people is, if we apply and we haven't really obtained approval, are we in? And the answer is yes, you are in, even they haven't really said yes or no. The moment we make the application for you and you are in, it doesn't matter the answer in January. They got really, by law, they got 3 months to reply. But as far as you're in before Brexit, they don't really need to reply, because we already submit the application. You are in the system.
Okay, but how do people find out the list of accepted companies to private healthcare companies? Is that in the public domain?
No, they don't really publicize it, because this is like private healthcare companies. They don't really publicize it.
Okay. Okay. We're going to, I think we've lost Raquel briefly.
Hello, Liz?
I lost you briefly.
Yes, me too. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Right.
This is the direct links.
Okay. Well, look, let's just try and get through a few questions before we run out of time.
Absolutely.
Sandra Alex asks, if you have retired early, are you able to get the Spanish healthcare once you reach retirement age?
Yes, but for the application of the residencia, she has to go with private healthcare.
Yes.
For the time being, and at least for 1 year.
Okay. And Gary Jackson asks, I understand that married partners are covered by the S1. Does this also apply to unmarried partners?
Yes, of course. Yes, for the S1 it's per person. So if you are entitled to receive a state pension, you can access to the S1 and then convalidate the S1 and have access to the national healthcare system. Of course.
Okay. And basically, I think you've sort of answered this already, that do you need to have the private healthcare set up and paid up before applying for the residency?
Yes, because one of the documents that for residency application they do request is a certificate from the private health insurance company confirming that you are full cover with no co-payments.
Okay. Yes. Brilliant. And if an UK pensioner is thinking of moving to Spain next year, will they receive free healthcare?
No, the healthcare in Spain is not free. They have to have it quite clear. As far as if they are working, if they are self-employed, or if they are employed by a company, of course the healthcare is free. But you have to contribute to the national healthcare system by working, when you're working as a self-employed or as employed. Okay. Otherwise, it's not free. You have to contribute. Actually, the system is agreed or accepted in a way that Spain will deduct, and in collaboration with England, will deduct from the state pension a fee per month for covering the national health care in Spain.
Okay. And someone asked, is it better to buy Spanish private healthcare in Spain, or will an English international one still cover it?
No. It has to be bought. It has to be bought in Spain with a Spanish private healthcare company with no co-payments. I recommend Sanitas. Myself and my family has it because they've got the best doctors and the best hospitals. Why? Well, it's just they were the first ones actually, and they got the best system in place, and they are not very different in money with regards to other companies.
Okay, and then Raquel, if people are not moving and they've got a holiday home, and like next year, and they might spend 3 months, in Spain, and something happens and we've left the EU, what's the situation then?
Well, every time someone comes to Spain, the maximum that they can spend within the calendar year is 3 months. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So nothing is going to happen. I mean, the point is, it's about fear. You don't have to fear anything because Spain always had American buyers, South African buyers, Australian buyers, and
Sure.
they all bought houses in Spain. And they are completely legally coming to Spain. So as far as you apply for your visado, which is the maximum stay is 3 months, and they will be granted this visado for 3 months, they can remain non-resident in Spain and come 3 months within a calendar year.
Sure,
they don't need to spend it in one
but
go.
I mean, how are they covered if they have an accident? I meant in terms of
how
they have to have insurance.
Sorry. Yes. Well, they have to have a healthcare cover, travel insurance covering healthcare.
Right. Brilliant.
They have to be absolutely covered because from January onwards, once Brexit comes into place, the European health card is not valid any longer if you remain non-resident, which means that you have to have not only a travel insurance, but also a health insurance that covers the person in case they get ill.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Good, thank you. And just we've got time for I think 1 or maybe 2 questions.
Yes.
What percentage of your Spanish salary goes to pay for healthcare under the national scheme?
The maximum they pay is 113 euros, which is around 90 or 90 pounds, 95 pounds. That's the maximum that goes, and that is one under the Convenio Especial.
Brilliant. Okay. We've got a couple of minutes, literally, Raquel. Is there anything briefly to flag up that people should know that we haven't covered?
Yes, well, what I need to say is there are ways of being covered, absolutely 100%. They need to find a way of doing so. I mean, if obviously they cannot be qualified for the special agreement, which is between UK and Spain, and this will be after Brexit, they have to go only for private health cover for 1 year. 1 year. After that, they can go the special agreement and they can go with that option. And also is wait until they get qualified to have a state pension and they can go to the national health care. But I can assure you that all those people that they go for the option of private healthcare for the first year, if they can afford it, they will keep both.
Okay, very quick, very final one. Yes or no? Can children have private healthcare? I presume that's a yes.
Of course. My family, my children, I've got 2 children, 17 and 11, and they are under the family group of Sanitas, and we've got a special, of course, fee because it's a family. So we've got a special fee, which is lower.
And I think you've already alluded to the fact that private healthcare can cover dental care, can't it?
Yes, can cover part of the dental care. Not absolutely everything. For example, aesthetic treatments are not covered.
Right.
But the important ones, they are covered.
Brilliant. Okay. And I presume, very quickly, I presume the cost increases as you get older, and like in most healthcare policies.
Yes, but as I said to you just now, I mean, and the other day I had this client, 75 years old, and you know, after that, if it is 75, you got a state pension anyway, at least, and you can get the S1, and I've got the emergency doctor, and you got the National Healthcare Centre close to your address, that you got your GP duly assigned.
Okay, thank you, Raquel. We've got to close up there because we're whizzing into another one, but
No
people can book some Zoom sessions with you,
Of
Raquel,
course,
can't they?
and or write to me directly, info@parentlegalgroup.com. I'm happy to answer any personal question, because obviously any person has their own conditions and their own situation. So happy to answer, info@parentlegalgroup.com. They can send me and I will reply within 24 hours.
And a Meet the Exhibitor page group. Thank you for listening. Hope this was useful. Sorry if we couldn't answer all your questions. Okay, thanks, Raquel.
No problem.
Bye.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for
Bye.
sharing. Bye.